up, everybody? Welcome back to the Friar Side Chat. We have been uber inconsistent with the podcast, but the good news is there is a team here in San Diego who has been consistent of late. That is the San Diego Padres. Let's get into it. So, what's up? You want to say something here
It,
before I jump in?
is it inconsistent when we just haven't done it for months? It's not even inconsistent. We've been gone for a while. Life has happened, but you know, I have not been this excited to watch a Padres team in my lifetime. The
Yeah,
moxie of this team is unbelievable. You look at last year versus this year. I mean, just two different teams. One had all the talent in the world, and you're pulling your hair out, going, "Why aren't we winning?" And then you subtract a ton of that talent and bring in these guys that just come together as a unit, and it
yep,
really does show the power of mentality,
yeah.
the
I was about
power
to say
of
that it's all up here.
it is.
Honest, it really is.
And let's not forget to give credit to where that all started and Mike Schilt, who, coming into this year, we were excited to have a new manager for a new message. We weren't sure if Schilt was going to be that guy. He wasn't either of our first picks when going through the list of people available. But man, I've been sold for a while now. I mean, it didn't take them getting 20 games over 500 for me to finally cave in on that. He's got them bought in, and that's really cool. And the hitting coach deserves
Yeah,
a lot of credit.
yeah. I
Big change in
definitely
philosophy.
get like a steady as she goes kind of mentality. I feel like from Schultz, like even in the beginning of the season where it's a little bit rocky or whatever, his tune never changed. He's got the same, overall presence. I feel like now when things are, seemingly very good versus when it was a little bit like at first, like, okay, what's going on? At one point the Padres were ranked like 26th or something in the league. I think I saw
Hmm.
now like in the power rankings are up to like maybe like sixth or
Sixth,
something.
sixth.
Yeah. Unreal.
But
Unreal.
on that note, too, though, something that he's done that I think has gone maybe overlooked by the general public is his adamant defense of his players and their position. No matter what, like you've said, wherever they've been, he's been honest about shortcomings, but also defending them on process and defending them whenever a media outlet was trying to maybe create a narrative. He was very quick to shut it down and almost disprove it every time it came up. When
Mhm.
they were talking about how bad they were doing, he goes, "Well, why aren't we talking about all the good things that we've done? We don't hear about that when we're going right, but when we're going wrong, here's what you've got." And I think that's a really cool attribute to have as a manager. I know that the players, I'm sure, really enjoy that, having a guy that's defending them against the public so that they don't have to defend themselves to the
Mhm.
media. So I think that's a really cool thing that he's done that maybe not as many people get to see.
Yeah, definitely. I like, I think we've maybe mentioned it before once or twice, but sometimes he'll get a little sassy with the media in his own show, and I love it. I want to see some more of that, a little sass out of Mikey boy.
Not only that, some of it's offhand too. Like the reporter asks an honest question, he's like, "I don't know how to answer this any better," and
Yeah,
then he goes on his own tangent
yeah,
of getting in it. But yeah, no,
love
it's
it.
it's fun to watch.
Awesome. Let's take a peek at the standings here. So, as it stands right now, today's September 16th. So, by the time this episode comes out, Padres will probably be playing the Houston Astros. But as it stands during time of recording, Padres are first place in the wild card. We are 1.5 games ahead of the Diamondbacks and 3.5 games ahead of the Mets and the Braves, who are tied for that third spot right now. It's going to be a fun race. And only 3.5 games back of the Dodgers in the National League West.
Do we have three
And
games to play against them anytime
oh,
soon?
coincidentally, we do next week. So it's very possible if we Padres continue to play very well, right? There might be like a 2 or 3 game spread while playing that Dodgers series, which would be unreal. So we
Unreal.
can hope and pray for that. I think all of baseball would love to see that, whether or not they can win the division or not. Just having that up for grabs by the time that series comes around, it'd be epic.
It's gonna be epic. I miss like one of the coolest things that I remember is when the Western Metal Supply Company building dropped the banner down to where instead of Western Metal Supply, it turned into Western drop the banner division champs.
Classy.
We haven't seen that since they opened the park. So
Yeah.
it'll be
Uh-huh.
really, really cool to see that again one day. Given that they end the season away, it probably won't happen even this year.
Yeah.
But
Oh
it
yeah,
is
that's true.
exciting.
That's true. That's
Can
true.
can I just ask what the heck happened to the wild card race? I mean, going into the All-Star break, it was like, well, if you're 500, it's up for grabs.
Yeah.
Everyone's being pretty mediocre, you're in it. And
Mhm.
then every team at the top of that just went on a tear.
Yeah.
We were unstoppable. out of the All-Star break, but you know who else was? Arizona.
Yep.
What? Why? Then we cool down a little bit, and it seems like Arizona and the Padres seem to have it on lock. Who heats up? The Mets.
Yep.
The freaking Mets. All we can hope for is that they crash and implode like they normally do. But I mean, just so many teams just going on a bona fide heater. Don't understand it, but it is making it exciting.
Yeah. And it sure seems like it is pretty much that four car or that four team race there between right San Diego, Arizona, Atlanta, and New York Mets. The Cubs are only they're 5 games behind New York, so they would have to go on an absolute bender. Basically win out, get some lucky with some losses, but yeah, that's going to be I think it's a 4 team race.
Well, how about this, Vince? How did we get here? How did we get to 20 games over 500?
Well, let's see. Something along the lines of what, like 36 and 15 or something since the All-Star break. I don't know if that's exact, but I think I saw it the other night. And that's just like, that's crazy. We haven't seen a run like that from our Padres in a long time.
No one saw that coming, and it's better than what any of us thought. I mean, when we were going into the trade deadline, you pick up some relievers, and I know I was questioning like, all right, why are we spending a lot of money on a rental piece in Scott? I think it's a valid, question when it's a year that you're not supposed to really go and do a whole lot. We were about 500 when we took them on. Um, and then it just went so much better than any of us could believe because those bullpen arms that we did get,
Yep.
credit to Preller,
Mhm.
have been in large part the difference maker in keeping us in these games and allowing the offense to scratch and claw back. They've held it down at the end of the games, whereas in previous years we've seen us give up some when it's not your main three going. I mean, it has really just worked out better than anyone could have hoped for. And then you're getting
Yep.
offensive output from guys that weren't necessarily expecting it. You got Solano hitting almost 300. You've got Peralta with some
Peralta.
timely
Yep.
hitting, and
Hmm.
then you've got Jake Chrono or Jake Cronenworth. Oh my goodness,
Love yourself some
Profar,
Jake Cronenworth.
Profar,
How about
and
Higgy
Merrill
too?
and Higgy. So like
Yep.
literally, there's not really a weak spot or someone not playing to their potential. Really, they're all on the upper echelon of what they can do, and it's pretty magical, man. I mean, they're all
Yeah.
believing. You feel it.
Hmm. Yeah, obviously like it's tough to compare like that 2022 trade deadline from Preller, but do you think this is his best
Yeah,
GMing yet?
based on the results, yes.
Right? Like
Based
there's
on the
obviously
results,
time
yes.
will tell, right? Like it depends obviously how far they go into the playoffs and if they win a World
Uh,
Series, the whole thing will be
Sure.
very telling. But I mean, he sure felt like he made all the right moves this year, right? Like
You
as
never know
far
what
as
you're
like
going to
when
get.
we talked about where were the holes that are preventing this team, right? Prior to the trade deadline, what are the holes that need to be filled? They've been filled, and like he kind of nailed it. There's
A lot
obviously
had to go right. A lot
yeah,
had to go right. You had to have
sure,
Joe Musgrove come back and shove because if he went and
yeah.
got relievers when he could have got starting pitching, and Joe comes back and
Well,
was pitching
Perez,
like he did before,
Martin Perez
Perez.
has been unreal.
Exactly. I mean, and that's a guy that was coming in with an over 4.5 ERA. Figure
Yeah,
something out with Ruben Niebla. Again, gets a ton of
weird.
credit. Acclimating a ton of new arms. Give credit to the catching, you know, staff, if you will.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a whole battery
sure,
crew down there, and they're having to
definitely.
learn all these new pitches and how they like to operate. They've done a really terrific job. But yeah, I mean, just unbelievable. Perez and Rich Hill came in with similar numbers,
Hmm.
starkly different results.
Yep, yep,
Uh, so yeah, as a GM, you couldn't ask for much more from the guys coming in and stepping in right away and doing what you hope they would and more.
yeah. And I think so. This conversation, I feel like, is kind of a good segue. But let's talk about keys to success. What are the Padres going to need to do to get to the playoffs and then excel and win games in the playoff? What are some key things that you'd focus in on? Curious to get your take.
You know, it's actually a great problem to have because there's not a lot that I would change from what they're doing right now. I think their weak spot is their starting pitching. Not entirely. Any of them on their A game is going to be great. But I have more faith in the consistency of the offense and the bullpen than I
Hmm.
do with maybe a Joe or a Yu Darvish implosion game. And I don't think that's what's going to happen. But that's what I think we're at the highest risk of happening.
Yep.
The offensive has proven, all year round that they're going to fight and claw no matter what the situation is. And that's again been a huge Mike Schilt preaching from go, and they're all in. I mean, that whole bench is in. They're ready to go. I have no doubt in my mind that when playoffs come around, they're going to have an approach, stick to it, and scratch and claw. The
Yeah.
bullpen has so many weapons that even if one of them, you know, scuffles a little bit, there's so many guys to replace them, so that you're looking at one bad inning in a game potentially, and they'll be able to, kind of mend that. The starting
Sure.
pitching is where you can start to. The rest of the pieces don't really matter if you just give
Mhm.
up 7 in the 3
Right.
innings.
Yeah. And actually that's exactly kind of what I was going to say. Like if I had to point to some key things, one would be the starting pitching because I just feel like, we have really high ceiling guys kind of all across the rotation,
Oh,
right? Like when they're right, when you look at Cease and you look at King and Musgrove and Darvish, right?
you do,
Like,
yeah.
and even Waldron, you could throw Matt Waldron and Perez, right? Like all those guys have very high ceilings when they're going good, but they've also all, been snake bit from time to time. So I
Mhm.
was just say if those guys can continue to pitch well like they have been, like they're capable of, that is a huge one. And then for me, of course, like obviously the whole offense doing its thing. And you had already mentioned Merrill's been coming up huge, Profar's been coming up huge, Solano's been coming up huge. But for me,
Tatis of late.
yeah, I was gonna say for me though, it's this guy right behind me. If
Mhm.
you can't see it, if it's just audio only, Manny Machado, dude. We saw it in 2022 when he puts the team on his back, like obviously that's when we get to championship series, like, and he's doing it right now. I think we talked about it a little bit before we hopped on this call, but since All-Star break, he's been hitting nearly 300. He's been hitting the power numbers. His OPS is, I don't know, I didn't look it up, but 800, 900s, I think.
Really good.
He's doing Manny type things right at the time of the year when we need him to do Manny type things. And obviously we saw what happened the last time he did that, 2022. Didn't so much happen last year. We've said it many times, I feel like, on this show, but it's like Padres go as the captain goes. So I would say that's the key for success, in my opinion. It's that starting pitching sets the tone, like you mentioned, and then our boy Machado. Those would be my two call outs.
You know what?
Yeah,
We're good friends, but I'm gonna disagree with you big time on that one, and I'll tell you why. Manny Machado, who was
yeah,
playing hurt and recovering. I mean, I think he's getting healthier now, and
hmm
he's playing more to his capability. I don't see that slowing down. He's a big game player too. He's not going to shy away from the moment. But this has been the year, unlike any other that we've had in Padre history for the last decade, where it isn't one, two, or three guys. We had
hmm
the era of Higashioka being the guy in the late innings to hit the home run. You had the stint of Profar carrying the offense. You have a Manny Machado couple of moments where he was carrying the offense. And then you've got Merrill Madness that
hmm
really catapulted us into where we needed to be. I mean,
definitely.
this has been something, even this is crazy far back, but Luis Camposano was hitting 320, 350 in the early parts of this year. They've been passing this baton of who's going to carry us, and it's not one, two, or three guys. Xander Bogarts heating up since he
Yeah.
came back,
hmm
big time, having some big swings. So, I mean, you can point to every guy almost on this roster, and at some point, they've played a pivotal role in carrying the team in some way. Perez, Waldron, and also these guys have all had parts where they haven't pitched as well. Cease carried us for he was really consistent. He was our dude. Struggled for a little bit. Vasquez came in and carried some games. I mean,
hmm
there's been so
hmm
many moments where they need to lean on someone and it's not the same guy every time.
Yeah.
I think
No.
that's why they've had the recipe for success the whole
Yeah.
year.
I agree. I agree with you. I think it's like we talked about the mentality thing, right? And it is a whole different thing, right? Where we don't have to just lean on the one guy. I guess that's not really what I'm saying. I guess I'm just saying it's like in the big moments, in the big time. Sure, it could be any one guy, but it's like Machado's gonna have to be there, do his thing. Like we're not making it to the playoffs and beyond if he's sucking. I'll put it that way.
I agree. I think your big three play a big part in the
Yeah,
playoffs, especially because when
sure.
you've got Xander Bogaerts grounding into double plays, Manny Machado
Right.
missing the balls that he
hmm
should crush, and Tatis striking out,
Yeah,
the way that they're grouped
exactly.
up in the lineup,
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
can sink a ship for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. And I'm glad you actually brought up kind of some of the points there with Bogarts because I did want to talk about the implications of the Kim injury and him continuing to be hurt, right? Because I looked it up, and I guess as of right now, like they said, he's resumed, baseball activities and he started throwing. That maybe not even across the diamond yet, but timetable is late September into October for Kim. Still very question mark though around his name, and so we've seen of late Bogarts at short, Cronenworth at second, Solano at first, which honestly, it's like, do you even want to change that up? Because I feel like that combination has been kind of getting it done. Um, Even I was looking at, obviously you're sacrificing perhaps some defense
Sure.
with Bogarts, at short rather than Kim, but not as much as you might think. I was looking it up, and Bogarts' range is still 80th percentile in the league. He still has, he's still in the positive as far as defensive runs saved. His arm strength is, I guess, not on the same caliber as Kim's, but all indications his last year that he played shortstop, he was a plus defender. And so far this season, metrics are kind of showing us also a plus defender. So it's like, to that point, it's like, even if Kim is coming back, like, do you want to sacrifice a Solano's bat? Because you'd have to work around something like that.
I think the bigger metric to look at is honestly between Solano and Cronenworth at first, because Cronenworth plays a
Mhm.
very good first base, and Solano's had
Right.
some shoddy defense. It's not the same, and
Sure.
he's not terrible. He's not a huge liability, but there are plays that a great first baseman makes that Solano doesn't.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
but then again, they were already toying with that when they were putting Arias at first too.
Right.
Similar defensive metrics between those two, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think when you get to the playoffs, defense wins championships, but so does timely hitting. So
Yeah.
it's gonna be something that they have to think about. Having Kim as a late inning defensive replacement or a late inning
Hmm.
pinch runner
Yeah.
has a lot of add value to it as well. So
Definitely.
there's a lot of ways you can work around it, but it's a great problem to have when we're thinking about two good options and which one do you want to go about versus how are we plugging the hole, which is kind of what we would have done in years prior. So
No.
it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I just thought it was an interesting one. And we don't have to dive too much into it. I feel like it's a conversation down the road, but I'm curious on implications of Kim's injury, and his free agency is kind of interesting too.
Oh,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
he
Because it's
just got
his value
cheaper.
is going to be, yeah, exactly. And it's like, well,
Hence why we don't extend him the previous year. Everyone who
yep.
called for extensions when he had a great year, hey, let's
He
buy
would have just
high.
overpaid. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So that'll be just another little interesting piece to the whole equation there.
for sure.
Like we mentioned, the Padres are going to be playing Houston for over the next 3 days, I believe it is. We've got three in Houston, which is of course always interesting because they tend to get hot at the end of the season, and it seems like they are, and they're going to be in the playoffs again, even though they were super shaky to begin the year. I know your fantasy team can attest to that. As a side story.
I don't
Um,
want to talk about it.
yeah, and then we got Chicago White Sox. The big bad White Sox are coming into town, and I hope I didn't just jinx everybody. Don't worry, I'm knocking on some wood. For the last home series of the year, so we got Astros and White Sox coming up. Um,
Scary games, honestly. I mean, I
yeah,
feel like
kind
there's
of.
so much. It's very hard not to look towards the LA Arizona
Hmm.
stretch. Well, I mean, like as a player, you know that that's still in the back of your head. But again, this team has been very conditioned to take it one game at a time. When you're able to have that kind of mentality and that discipline, and that's the key word is discipline. It really helps making your job a lot easier. And I think that they're in a position to handle this, not even adversity, but just to be able to handle the mental side of this game, which is to not look too far ahead. So I
Yeah.
think they're going to do just fine.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it will be kind of an interesting mental test too. Kind of like you're saying, it's like Houston. Obviously, American League don't have to worry about like too much as far as playoff situations go, but obviously a very good team. So you're going to have to obviously show up and ball if you're going to play them well. And
I'm not
then,
worried about them. I'm worried about the
right,
Sox.
Chicago White Sox, right? Because then it's like a dip, could be a trap series. I'm just hoping it's not going to be like a similar to like a Rockies scenario, right? I'm sure that's probably what you're alluding to.
Yeah, well, also when you're the White Sox, right? Like that middle stretch of the season's the easiest to beat them because the season is not, the end of it's too far away for them to really think it's like almost there, and the beginning, they've already been damaged from being like we're already out of it. So coming towards the end of the year, man, these are guys that are fighting for their spot to not get replaced the next year.
Yeah.
This is the time where they're kind of revitalized in the sense of this year's almost over. Let's end on a high note, or let's try and ruin. We have some meaningful games for
Yep.
the other team. Let's have some fun and ruin someone's day because that
Yep.
is a fun feeling, and they
Definitely.
haven't had opportunities for that in the last couple months. So it'll be a tough series. I feel.
Yeah. They've been playing a little bit better of late. I caught one of their games. There was like a big game they had against the A's, I think, where they scored like 10 runs. And again, I guess A's aren't necessarily a powerhouse either, but still, a major league team is a major league team, and they had some big comebacks, and they've been swinging it. They still got Crochet, they still have Luis Robert, like they still got some guys. So basically, it's just don't underestimate the White Sox in
Don't
preparation
sleep.
for some of these other teams. And then, right, ending with three in LA and three in Arizona. Whoever was in charge of scheduling the MLB season last year must have had a crystal ball because they knew what they were doing when they scheduled these series. That's going to be, as we mentioned, a lot of fun. But also just kind of crazy that we're already here. Season there's only about a month left, and then we get into the fun October series. Last note I'll say is kind of touching back on that potential playoff picture. If things end in the positions in which they are right now, the Padres would actually be facing Arizona because they would be the 4 and 5 seeds in the National League there, which would be kind of interesting, right? Because then you just come off a 3-game series for them, maybe deciding
Oh my
whatever,
gosh, yeah, that'd
maybe,
be nuts.
right? One swings, then you take a couple days off and then head right into the playoff series against the same team. So that's I'm sure also interesting mentally, unless some things shake up.
I wonder
Uh,
if you're at that point, if you start doing some starting pitching gymnastics. You know, this
right,
series does. We're
right,
gonna play each other no matter what. Like, however it shapes out, it might be to
sure,
where that those games don't even matter.
right.
It's do we line ourselves up for our aces, our horses, to just be in line with their recovery to go pitch game one of the postseason?
Very valid question. And I guess we'll just have to find out. I'm not sure. I mean,
Stay tuned.
yeah, stay tuned. Mike Schitt will let you know. He'll get sassy about it too, as he tends to do.
Totally.
But either way, again, it was very good to be back. I think that'll wrap it up for this time around. Obviously, we're very stoked to see how the games turn out this week. I'm going to the game on Saturday. Yeah, you got
Wait,
another point? What?
there's one that we've missed, and it needs a second.
What?
MVP of the Padres this season has, without a doubt, been Merrill. Without a doubt.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
has
I think
kickstarted
so.
and changed the culture of that clubhouse. He brings energy. You hear it from the pitchers, you hear it from the players.
Yeah,
He is a
consistency too.
catalyst in the clubhouse and a consistent factor on the field. And he is doing some really special things. I am very excited with what he's done, and he deserves a shout.
Yeah, give me that rookie of the year too.
ROI.
ROY. Better ERA than Skeens.
More home
That was a
runs.
good. That was a good. Yeah. We just won't talk about innings pitched or anything. That's fine. But the metrics don't lie. They don't lie. Give us that rookie of the year, and then that also gives us a draft pick. So we'll take twofold there.
Take them both.
Yeah, awesome. But again, anyways, it was awesome being back with you, my friend, and we'll do it again very soon. Thank you again, everybody, for joining in. Playoffs are right around the corner. Let's go. If you're
Go Pods.
not fired up, then get fired up. Later.